Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sports Entrepreneurs and New Frontiers panel. My name is Amal Mapani. I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan and the student lead for this panel. I'm very excited to introduce to you our panelists for today. First, we have Wyc Grousbeck, owner of the Boston Celtics and managing partner at Causeway Media, and Michael Rubin, executive chairman and founder of Fanatics and owner of the Philadelphia 76ers. The panel will be moderated by Jessica Gelman, vice president of marketing and strategy at Kraft Sports Group. We're going to leave about 20 minutes at the end for Q&A, so please log into the official SSAC15 app and go to the Q&A tab to ask any questions there. From that, I'll hand it over to Jessica. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. All right, so one of the benefits of being the chair of the conference is that you get to pick your panels. So I'm very honored to be here with Wyc and Michael, and I think what I thought was so interesting about having these two gentlemen, in addition to them being very honest and sharing great information, is they come from different perspectives in the business world. Wyc obviously has primarily been focused, obviously an owner, but coming more from the investing side, and Michael coming more from the entrepreneurial side. And hopefully you guys have read their bios and know all the very impressive things that they've done. But at a very high level, in the past year, Wyc started Causeway Media, which is investing in a number of sports-related companies that we'll talk about. And then Michael, when he was 12, had his first startup, ultimately sold it to eBay for several $1 billion. And then in 2011, founded Fanatics, which is Fanatics, Rue La La, and ShopRunner.
I'm going to keep you on the spot.
ShopRunner. So we're going to just talk about their experiences and how they approach business and think about investing or what they might start and kind of what they think is the future in sports business. So that's kind of what we're going to cover. So coming from very different backgrounds, gentlemen, when the opportunity to be involved in purchasing a team, and you guys both took very different tactics, what made it so appealing, and do those factors still hold true today?
Okay, up to you.
You're the general partner of the Celtics. I'm going to have you start.
Well, all right. I got in before you did, so we'll go chronologically maybe. But there wasn't an opportunity to buy the team. It wasn't for sale. And I watched the Red Sox get auctioned off in 2001, and I thought about the Celtics, the Bruins, the Patriots. I thought about other Boston teams, being Boston born and raised. And so I guess that's the first thing, is it came from a passion of wanting to be involved in a Boston team, not being anywhere else. And then so I sort of tracked down the Celtics owner out of town. Wow. He was running it was a public company, publicly traded, not for sale, owned out of town since 1963. And I ended up 6 months later with control of the team, thanks to all my partners and to Daryl, who helped put the whole deal together, and many other people. But it didn't come from business. It came from the unbelievable dream I had of being involved in a Boston team, and that basically came from the Red Sox and from my dad. All through his life had wanted to own a baseball team or something. So he probably had the original idea, but I don't know, it just came from somewhere other than business.
Well, I think it's fascinating because at the end of the day, I mean, you're investing in businesses, and this is maybe one of the biggest investments you ever made. So kind of, we'll come back to that, I think, but Michael, you want to share your perspective?
I was going to say, my story is far worse. I classify myself more as an idiot because the opportunity kind of was right in front of me, and I missed it for the most part. I had, as you said, just sold the company I had founded, GSI Commerce, to eBay in spring of 2011. And my next door neighbor was Ed Snyder, who controlled the Sixers and the Flyers.
Easy Ed, as we called him, around the NBA table.
Yeah, got it, Easy Ed, I got it. And Comcast was my original investor. And a bunch of people called me and said, hey, Michael, do you want the Philadelphia 76ers? I said, oh, it's terrible business. Who has any interest in this business whatsoever? And I basically told everybody who asked I had no interest. And then when Josh Harris and Dave Blitzer put the deal together to buy the team, and came to me, and David Stern also came to me at that point. They said, hey, take a look at this. And once I understood the business and kind of where it was headed, I realized that what I had in my head was completely wrong. I was a complete bozo and probably should have done it on my own, but was fortunate to get in business with great people. And with David and Josh putting the deal together, they saw an opportunity, quite frankly, that I missed in 2011 originally.
So you
Wait,
regret.
how's that for
Now,
obviously?
I already have
Thank you,
my
Richard.
first. I have my first question for Michael.
Go ahead.
We're going to be interactive. If he's willing to.
I'm going to give
interact.
my
We'll
first,
see.
second,
We'll
third,
see.
and
You're right,
fourth,
you're right.
by the way.
We'll
so
see.
No
we'll
problem.
see. You sort of portrayed that as you looked at it. It's not a great investment. Then other people convinced you to take a second look. But the fact is, I saw you at that first playoff series against, way in your first year of ownership.
The first series where you beat us.
Well,
You can say it.
we
I
might
mean,
have.
yeah.
We've,
I knew you were dying to
yeah.
say it, so
We've
just,
won
like, spit
some
it
or
out.
lost some. I don't really need to tell people that we beat you, because everybody
you.
knows. But the fact is, it's not about business for you either. You've got, first of all, you didn't need to have a job anyway. You didn't need to work. You didn't need to invest in this or anything else. But wouldn't you say that this is much more about pride, legacy, championships, et cetera, than business? Do you think of the Sixers and the Devils as an investment?
I think about them as both. And my biggest business is Fanatics, which is a billion-dollar-plus retailer of licensed sports merchandise. I think about it through both lenses. Certainly, you start with wanting to be a winner and want to win championships and want to do great things in the community.
Right.
But I also want to build value and create great businesses. And I happen to believe that sports is a great business. And it's very easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and sit here today. We all know the value of the Sixers was an incredible purchase in 2011. But I'd say I'd want to do both. Not.
Right.
If you said to me,
I'm not saying don't do both, but
if you
I'm-
said I could win championships and I was going to, lose $50 million a year and have a bad business, that would be a more complicated question, because that's not an easy one to just say, hey, if I could just win but I have a really bad business, does that work? I think you need to do both.
Let me
by the way-
let me pressure test that assertion.
Okay.
You sure?
Okay.
I like that you bought the ring. But by the way, we're gonna
Like
get
that?
we're
Like
gonna
I
get-
don't ever
hold-
bring
hold
a
on.
ring everywhere I'm going?
Putin's coming for that.
All right, I put it back away.
All right, so
He took Roberts, and now he's going to take yours. I'm going to call him.
no, but I think the point is that you guys now being involved, either owning or partial ownership, and kicking yourself a little bit about not buying outright maybe the first time, you're both doubling down into sports. Michael, now you're part ownership of the New Jersey Devils, and Wick, you've started a whole fund that's basically investing in sports properties. You've bought effectively skateboarding.
Yeah, no NHL. I got to say that's pretty impressive to also have the Devils. But yes, we have 5 investments at Causeway. Yeah.
So talk about what specifically, because now you're owners, but you're now investing more into the space. What makes it so compelling? What have you learned since you got on the other side of it and are like,
So, look, I've had a strong belief since I got it wrong originally in 2011 that sports is a great business. And I think there's been a perception that you can't make money in sports or sports isn't a great business. They're wrong. The perception is wrong. I think
Mark Cuban doesn't think so.
So Mark's wrong about a lot of things. I love him. He's a stud. He's very smart. But if you look at the values of sports teams over the past 10 years, there's been incredible growth from a value perspective, and there's been incredible growth of what these businesses are making. And I think the same thing translates throughout sports. I believe we're in a business today. Fanatics, it's a billion-dollar retailer of licensed sports merchandise. The business didn't really even exist a decade ago. And we think it could be a $5 or $10 billion global business over time. So to me, sports is a great overall area to invest in. Every year there's more and more fans. They're incredibly passionate. People can't get enough of their sports team in sports. So to me, it's an area where I want to keep being more and more focused on sports and keep putting more and more capital into sports. And I think ultimately it's a double great return, both financially and it's a business I love and I'm incredibly passionate about.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Wick, as you have been investing with Causeway, what are the specific things that you are looking at when you're investing in SeatGeek,
Right.
Street League skateboarding, Formula E?
Right.
What about those? And they're different, right? But what about maybe walk us through the logic on those
Right.
investments.
Well, I guess I felt really lucky to get involved with the Celtics and then see how the media rights have exploded over the last 12 years, because I didn't predict it at all. Talking about being wrong about it, I thought this might be a really bad investment, but we'd have the time of our lives, and I miscalculated that. I'm having the time of my life, but it's turned out to be, luckily, luckily a good investment. And so I didn't know.
I remember, by the way, you're not going to remember this. The first time I met you, you told me that the Celtics were worth $1 billion in 2011.
I was probably trying to sell them to you.
And I thought this guy's like smoking some good stuff.
Right.
And sure enough, you should have told me it was worth $1.5 billion or $2 billion.
Right,
so
right. I don't know. Okay.
Shows you underestimated your own asset.
Well,
Probably won't ever happen again.
Yeah, right. I've changed.
Next time somebody
I've
asks you,
drunk
be like,
the
yeah,
Kool-Aid.
Celtics are worth $10 billion.
Yeah. So wait, all right. Back to where I was. So looking at sports, looking at media rights, and saying it's unbelievable. The fan passion. It's now going global. These small number of franchises now have global followings. Therefore, the media rights have multiplied. And I said, how do I double down on that? And the way to double down, it seems like, is to focus on younger audiences and maybe different ways of viewing, mobile, over the top, and newer sports that aren't already locked in. And we have great partners at the NBA. You have them at the NHL as well. Fabulous partners, but those are long-term deals locked in. Where's the opportunity for a venture investor? It's newer sports and newer fans, and so that's what we're doing at Causeway.
By the way, I would say it's been interesting for me being kind of on both sides, both as a partner in the Sixers and Devils, but also, my primary business being Fanatics. You get to look inside of the leagues, and one of the things that continues to amaze me is how each year in the big sports, there's great new opportunities that emerge. I mean, look at what's happening, as an example, in fantasy sports today and all the excitement around DraftKings and FanDuel. And by the way, I'm sure gambling's going to get... What's that?
Both sponsors of the conference.
Yeah. And I think I'm a big believer that if you go back through time, there's multi-billion-dollar value created opportunities in each of the professional sports that get created every year.
Agreed.
Wow. I mean, those are big statements. So I think you guys are both now, owning startups. And Michael, you just mentioned that you think that Fanatics is going to grow from $1 billion to potentially $5 to $10 billion. Like, how exactly are you going to grow a new league and then grow your business?
We're going to leave the growing new leagues to Wick. I'd love to hear, by the way, what new leagues are you going to grow, since it's my turn to ask the question?
Fair enough.
Start there.
Well, so
I'd like to hear about the skateboarding league where you skateboard personally in the league and are kind of like the lead endorser.
That would be
that'd
be a little 2-second clip, and then I'd be off the thing. I've got a scar all the way down here from last time I skateboarded, which was when I was 16, and I was flying down a road and I fell off because I have no balance. So the Street League skateboarding is Rob Dyrdek from MTV. He's got like 40% of the programming on MTV right now. He's an unbelievable guy, an unbelievable entertainer, producer of content, ridiculousness and so on, Robin Big. And then he's an amazing skateboarder, and he took the top 20 skateboarders in the world. He got them together. He said, if we are together in this exclusively, we can take the purses, the prize money, from $5,000 a weekend, $10,000 a weekend. How about $1.5 million in payouts? But we're going to do it under the guise of Street League skateboarding. So they went exclusive. They went. They have a new scoring system which they have patented, and we think skateboarding might be an Olympic sport using probably the Street League scoring system. And it's going to be, and it's a phenomenal business with some great guys, growing rapidly and creating new stars that young fans are really connecting into. So it's SLS, Street League skateboarding. It's incredible.
It's awesome. Do you think there could be significant leagues that don't exist today created, in the next 10 or 20 years? Like, just something of
in other sports or other action sports? I just think the X Games.
Outside of we think about the
snowboarding,
5 or 6 big sports.
Right. Well, I guess so, and I think another one might be this Formula E, which is Formula One type cars, but fully powered. We have the worldwide, global exclusive to do world championships in fully electric and in fuel cell for the next 25 years. So we have manufacturers like Audi and Renault in, running. We're sort of not competing with Formula One. There's no way to compete. They're huge and they're fabulous. But we're running in downtown Moscow, downtown London, downtown Beijing, places that combustion cars are not allowed to race. And we're racing there this year. So we're kind of just trying to, and what I do is I back entrepreneurs in those things. So it's great people doing this, and we're trying to be helpful from the sidelines or the background.
It's very cool.
Thank you.
Jess, we're going to turn it back over to you for questions.
No, no, you didn't answer your question.
Sorry,
I shouldn't be asking.
Oh, you got to ask me one more time now. We didn't ask about how bad my ADD is, to where if we have like a 5-minute conversation, you have to re-ask the question again to be fair.
How are you going to grow Fanatics from $1 billion to $5 to $10 billion?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And can I invest?
Sure, absolutely. Just not at the valuation that you said the Celtics were worth a couple years ago, which was great then. So start with, I guess, what's the opportunity? And what I think, Wick, you mentioned, when we stopped kidding around, you mentioned kind of being lucky that the Celtics became such a good business. I kind of feel like I was pretty lucky that I fell into the licensed sports business because I didn't get into the business for what today are the obvious reasons. And if you look at the licensed sports business, what creates this giant need is that it's a really hard business to do in brick and mortar retail because you've got to figure out, are the Celtics going to be good or not this year? Who's going to be the hot player?
No.
Who's going to be?
Apparently not.
Right. I'll give you a layup there. Is someone going to get injured? Trying to figure out, what merchandise to have in what stores from what players and meets each fan's needs. It's the most complicated business in the world. Think about the NFL. There's 1,700 players today. Nike makes, of those 1,700 players, they probably make 200 of those 1,700 players. But a fan wants, there are fans that want all 1,700 players. A great example, when the Patriots won the Super Bowl, Nike didn't make a jersey for Butler.
Right.
But guess what? We sold 1,000 jerseys over the next couple of days of Butler, who nobody ever made a jersey for before. So it's a long-winded way of saying this is a business where fans have a deep need to get any player, any team, any color, any place, all types of variation, and it doesn't work in the brick and mortar business. And we didn't get in the business for that reason. But what we've realized today is you've got so many fans that live in different cities from the home market, the teams they want, the college they went to, that inventory is not available where they live. They want different players or variations that we've talked about. So that makes this a pretty big opportunity to start with. Going forward, we think this is actually a category that the big athletic brands, Nike and Adidas and Under Armour, they're actually in the business to sell their brand. So Nike wants to sell more Nike basketball shoes or more, Nike football products. We actually want to sell sports licensed merchandise, so we're putting hundreds of millions of dollars of marketing behind growing the licensed sports industry. So, we kind of feel like we're just getting started. At $1 billion today, over the next, decade, why couldn't we build a $5 or $10 billion global business?
So it's personalization.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
sure. So what are big things without getting too specific because we want to give all our.
I'm trying to get some insights.
Yeah. So I'll tell you one thing we think is a great opportunity is in sports, people think about the big hot markets. The Patriots just won the Super Bowl. The Sixers are NBA champions. I'm being aspirational today.
Oh, we're
yeah. The Celtics finished 0-82.
We're back in, what are we, 1983?
Yeah.
I graduated in college then.
Yeah, I'm still working on how we get that ring away from you today. But, in our business, about 10% of our sales come from what you call hot markets, big events that happen in sports. What we've actually realized is in sports, moments happen every single game, every single day in sports. And what we're actually creating now is an engine to take moments, what we call micro moments that happen in sports, and memorializing those moments with great merchandise offering and be able to do that on a daily basis. So instead of just thinking about these giant moments, think about a team that's just looking for what's exciting that's happening in every sport, in every game on a daily basis, and then completely personalizing that experience to a fan. I mean, we think about, when the mobile phone, when the iPhone came out, I'm honest enough to admit, I would not have said that was going to be a huge opportunity for e-commerce. Today, I think about the Apple iWatch as a giant opportunity.
Right.
And how do I get that exact product that you want exactly in the moment? So something great happened, and before you stand up in excitement, I've literally marketed a specific product that's on your watch. And by the way, you're already authenticated. I know who you are. And literally, you tap it once, and it can be ready for you at the stadium on the way out, or it can be at your house the next day.
As you know, as an owner, but I mean, just the perspective from the team owners and the leagues is that we're trying to do what we can just to put a team on the court and sell the tickets and do everything we can. Obviously, you get a little overmatched even doing that sometimes. But to try to think innovative. I mean, we've got to rely on partners like Fanatics and like Michael to think innovatively about how to do this. You run your own team store. I know we have our own team store at the Celtics, but we rely on Fanatics and Michael to do this thinking as trusted partners. We don't want to switch out partners year by year. We want people who really care, who have the time and the focus to think about it, and then it all works, well. But it's an essential part of the whole business.
It's the first time I ever went to hug you before.
Okay, well, that'll stop. Ask me another question and we'll
It's coming.
we'll wreck the mood.
It's coming.
But Michael, you're talking about growing your audience, and I'm going to go back to you, Wick, on this with these new leagues that you're investing in. I mean, and even at SeatGeek, how are you specifically growing those audiences? What are your thoughts, and maybe what are you stealing that you've done successfully with the Celtics and applying?
Right. I'm not stealing anything technically.
Sorry, borrowing.
If that was the verb, I deny that.
It's an investigation beginning right now.
I'll tell you about SeatGeek a little bit. SeatGeek is really the leading mobile ticket marketplace. We are a Ticketmaster team at the Celtics and proud to have been throughout the 12 years that I've been there and will be for many more years, we hope. There's also just an emerging mobile secondary market. My good friend Jim Holtzman from Ace Tickets in Boston, I've known him since long before the Celtics, since we were in the early mid-90s sort of buying and selling tickets on the street corner. And there's a whole secondary marketplace out there. We have NBAtickets.com powered by Ticketmaster. But as I'm looking to invest as a fiduciary for my partners, I have NFL owners, NBA owners, and private equity and media executives in my Causeway Fund. Right. We're looking at where things are going. And SeatGeek is where people are going. It's where millennials are going to buy tickets. They want to scour every deal. It's like Kayak. They want to know where everybody's tickets are, and then SeatGeek tells them if it's a good buy or not. So it's a great company. I was at a board meeting yesterday in New York. It's going super well. Yeah. And it goes back to investing in people. I've been very, very, very lucky, and every time it's because actually I was lucky enough to meet somebody who's killer, who's been able to take the thing where it needs to go. So that's why I'm a lucky guy. So
here's maybe my question to you. Would you have invested in Michael?
Now, I know him well enough to know, yes, I would have invested. If you would have had me, I would have invested. Just not in the Sixers. I was already at the Celtics.
I had a couple of things I was going to say, but I'm gonna stay well behaved for at least another 10 minutes.
Well, Michael, I mean, you've been talking and saying a lot about e-commerce and how important it is and the growth that you see, and I think basically been a naysayer to the brick and mortar stores. But you recently were announced as you're going to be in arena for NASCAR. Is that correct? So what are you thinking now? How did you just change course? What are we missing here? Or are we missing anything? What did you learn?
So a couple things. Mathematically, brick and mortar retail is a very difficult business. I mean, if you just say that retail in the U.S. is $3 or $4 trillion, and that it's going to grow, call it 3% a year, if you look at where that growth is coming from, it's really mostly being absorbed online. So essentially you have rising labor costs, you have rising rent costs over time, maybe not in the near term, but rising rent costs, and you're not going to have a lot more productivity out of stores. So if you ask me, am I a fan of brick and mortar retail overall, the answer is definitely not. I think there'll be, if you look at retail as an entire sector, brick and mortar retail as an entire sector, I think there'll be winners and losers, but there'll be more losers than winners over the next decade. So I'm not someone, if you gave me $1 to invest, it would not be in traditional retail. What we've learned, and it's actually one of the benefits to being on both sides of the sports business, is the merchandising that happens in arena, at a stadium, trackside at NASCAR, is incredibly important part of the licensed sports industry. It's only about 10% of the whole industry, so call it a $15 billion business, about $1.5 billion. And what we've realized is to really give the fan the best experience, it wasn't really happening from the food and bev guys. And the food and bev guys are very good at food and beverage, but to really have the right merchandise and to really be able to innovate that business and to be able to make it an omni-channel where a fan could be in the seat at a Celtics game or Sixers game and order a merchandise either to be delivered at their seat or to be delivered next day at their house. It wasn't there. There wasn't a current infrastructure to do that. So we recognized it as a need that the owners of the rights that we're buying really had to really take this business to the next level. And if you use NASCAR as an example, different than any other sports league, NASCAR consolidates all of their retail business. So, Wick, you choose, how you do retail with the Celtics. The Sixers choose it for the Sixers.
But
NASCAR does the whole thing together. And NASCAR came to us and said, we've got this model. And, the model that they've done, which was bringing 30-plus trailers for each driver to each race, had a lot of opportunity to innovate. And so we're completely together with NASCAR, innovating that model is going to be very different going forward. And I'd say we recognize it as a big need to be partners with the rights owners in that business. That does not mean if I'm sitting here in a couple of years from now and we have 1,000 stores.
Don't count on it.
Yeah, I won't be sitting here because someone will put me in a psychological ward. But I do believe there's limited brick and mortar like in venue that I think is super strategic to our partners and that we can add a lot of value to.
Can I go back to the question of whether first of all, I offered or asked to invest in Fanatics just a minute ago, so that's your answer to that.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
And he said no.
The docs are coming
he said
over.
no.
The docs are coming
But the
over.
second thing is, here's how I like to invest. I like to say, I thought about the Celtics, and I'm like, well, I think it'll probably double the money over time or something. It's going to be the time of our lives. It really wasn't a business decision. It was an emotional decision. But if Michael's at over $1 billion, and he said he's going to get to $5 billion at least. If there's anybody in the room that really doubts that he's going to get to $5 billion or will die trying, I'd like to, raise your hands, because he will die trying if he doesn't. I have a lot of confidence that he will. So it's like knowing the future. And so you know the future. And when I looked at the Celtics, I felt like I know the future a little bit, which is that it's a protected franchise. It's been going since '46. They had 16 championships. It's an iconic thing. I think basketball is going to go more global. I think it's going to grow, but there's downside protection. It's just like you sort of know the future. You don't know the future with Apple or Google or a particular car company. Car companies go out of businesses. Tech companies merge. I don't know in 10 or 15 or 20 years who's going to be the leading phone company, the car company, or anything else. But I do know, I believe at least, the Celtics will be around. The Sixers and Devils will be around. And so that's why I was willing to invest. I actually probably believe Fanatics will be around.
Wow.
Okay.
Very
I
positive.
appreciate the kind
I know.
words.
It's a little investing.
Making friends up
look,
here.
Yeah, I know.
One of
I don't
these-
really care if he likes me or not, but I'm just saying the truth.
One of the things I really agree with you on is you've got to pick great entrepreneurs to get behind, and you said that's kind of a thesis of yours in picking businesses to invest. It's I think it's the same thing in any business. You pick the right entrepreneurs to bet on. One thing that I appreciate that you said, but I really agree with, when we set a goal, we're either going to make that goal or die trying, and everything doesn't always go the way you want it to go, but perseverance is a huge...
The die trying phrase, that was my first press conference as the lead owner of the Celtics, and Bob Ryan was in the audience and said, Mr. Grousbeck, or how do I pronounce that? Whatever. And he said, look, it says here Banner 17 has bought the Celtics. Did you seriously name your company Banner 17? And what does that mean? And I looked at him and I said, well, it's self-explanatory, Bob. This is the first press conference I've ever had in my life. And he said, are you guaranteeing a championship to the fans of the Celtics? Are you here on your first day guaranteeing a championship? And I thought for a second, and I said, all right, Bob, I'm guaranteeing that we will win Banner 17 or I will die trying. And so that's the first quote I ever gave as part of the Celtics. And so, and it came from, I hadn't pre-thought, nobody wrote that, no PR people wrote that for me. It was a guarantee.
That is a great answer.
So that's
what
happened.
I wish you all the best other than more banners. That I'm not wish. I wish you all the best, but I'm not wishing for more banners for you.
But what you guys are talking about are what are the qualities that you are looking for when you're either evaluating a business or an entrepreneur? What are the, I guess I would call it, 2 or 3 most critical things aside from perseverance and the willingness to die trying that you think this person has to have this, otherwise it will not work?
I personally think it's having a passion for it. There's so many smart people, and they say, look, here's a market need I've identified, and flipping real estate or a new app for in-stadium food delivery to your seat or whatever. But if they don't really care about it, they just sort of heard about it and think it's a good idea. If it's a mercenary transaction, I'm just not really that interested. I want people that really care. Rob Dyrdek cares about skateboarding. I mean, it's like a deep-seated thing. He's, professional quality skateboarder. People I've backed in the past really, really care about what they do, and I really, really care about the Celtics and Boston sports generally. I'm a season ticket holder of all 4 teams. Excuse me, 5, the Revolution. All 5 teams. I don't think I am Rev. I don't have Rev tickets, but I have.
They're on the way now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I need some.
Thank you on behalf of the Crafts.
But I'm that passionate about the Celtics. That's why I was basically willing to back myself to do the Celtics. I mean, I literally took every liquid penny that I had and then mortgaged my house to do the Celtics, to my small piece of the Celtics deal. So, but I look for, you really care about what you're doing. It's not just a business plan that makes financial sense.
I think that's a great trait in an entrepreneur. I've asked people the specific question that you just said about if I were ever given an opportunity in a specific sports league and I had to go all in. And all in is kind of, as you just described, take everything you got because, you got to write a big liquid check to go do this. Is that nuts? And you get two different answers, and yours was definitely not nuts. I believe in it, I'm doing it. And I think that's what makes a great entrepreneur, someone who believes in what they're doing and they're willing to go all in. On your question, Jess, I kind of break it down to two things. And I think if you figure these two things out, you generally have a pretty good batting average. The first is sizing up the opportunity. I think a lot of people get that wrong. And so when you go out and you look at a business, I try to figure out, well, what can this be? Kind of what's the size of the market opportunity? What can you really do with it? And if someone comes as an example and says, hey, I've got this great app, and it sounds great, but it's never going to be a good business. You got to say, okay, interesting, but it's not really going to be a good business. So I think you got to size up the opportunity and say, can this really be interesting enough? I put things through a filter at our companies. If it can't be really material to the company, then I almost, I don't want to spend time on it. And we've said no. We say no to a lot of things because we don't want to distract from our core business and our core focus. And the second thing is, do you have someone you really believe in who can do it? Because if you have a good idea and you put it through the filter and it's a big enough idea, and then you got someone really good who you believe is the right person behind it, you should have pretty good outcomes. You're not always going to get them right, but you should have pretty good outcomes.
So I kind of want to build off a little bit what Wick said. I mean,
Although you made an excellent point, but let's go back to what I was saying.
No, it was an excellent point. No, but I mean, it's not, well, I mean, it might come back to...
Come on, we got to have a little, come on, people. By the way, write your questions in that you really want us to answer, because in a minute we're going to go to questions. And if there aren't good questions, I'm walking out. Okay, and actually, you may want that.
When do you anticipate the next banner coming?
Right. So...
Hold on.
What's that?
When's the next banner coming for the Celtics?
Just hopefully before the next banner for the Sixers. That's the only answer I'm
Got it, okay.
And it's tracking that way.
Time will tell.
Well, I mean, actually what I wanted to ask is, what is the riskiest move that you have ever made? And I'm assuming for you, but maybe it wasn't, the decision for the Celtics.
Absolutely, and it was not just the riskiest financial. I mean, I'm a very lucky guy from fortunate in many, many ways, and it wasn't that I was going to be dead broke if the Celtics thing didn't go through, but I went all in on it. But the truth is I risked a lot for that because I was going to become the public face of it and the guy who was going to be making or responsible for the decisions, really. As the governor, that's the role of the governor in the NBA. And so I had a lot of personal family and friends in, and a lot of people looking at me, and it wasn't clear that we were ever going to get anywhere near Banner 17 or anything else. That was the riskiest thing I've ever done, for sure.
That's awesome. Michael?
Probably for me, and I didn't even think about it as risky at the time, was in 1998, I was in my mid-20s, and I had a company that was doing about $200 million in the footwear business. Yep. We owned a company here in Boston called Ryka. We had a company called Yukon, which I just saw an old investor in Yukon in the audience. And we had another company called Apex One, which we bought out of bankruptcy. We were a $200 million wholesale footwear business. And literally, we sold to retailers. I knew nothing about the internet. And when e-commerce was starting in 1998, we literally reinvented the entire company, sold off all of our legacy businesses, and started an e-commerce business. And by the way, I knew nothing about it. I knew absolutely nothing about it. And the only thing I knew that I was young, and that the people I was partnering with, the retailers, looked at me, they said, hey, you should understand the internet because you're a young guy, so here are our rights to Sports Authority or Dick's Sporting Goods or Modell's to go run online. But, that was, I completely reinvented a business with no understanding of it and no capital, and it worked out, knock on something. It worked out okay. So, to me, entrepreneurs take risks. Probably as you get wiser, you get more calculating, you get smarter about them. But, I love decisions like that. I remember investors screaming at me, telling me, what was I thinking? I was out of my mind. How could I possibly take this $200 million business that made $20 million a year and give it up to start this internet thing that I knew nothing about? And I like those opportunities, and I'll do that again.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, 5 to 10 billion apparently. So
I know something about that, though.
Yeah,
not enough. But
now
something.
you do. So kind of, again, as you guys are looking to the future, what are some of the bigger macro trends happening out in the world that you think are helping or hurting the sports business?
Well, I guess the Celtics probably used to appeal to 25-mile radius, 50-mile radius of Boston way back in the day. I mean, we had great players from Worcester, but I don't know how many people were even able to follow the games or come to the games from southern New Hampshire or really western Mass. I mean, it's a local phenomenon, the Celtics and the Bruins back in the day when Walter Brown, in the 50s and all that. And now we're global. It's because of technology. And so it's the same little franchise, but it's not just the strength of a radio signal or a broadcast TV 50 miles, then cable came in, and that's my family business, thank God for cable. But now it's global. So we're taking the Celtics this fall to Europe. Teams in the NBA obviously go to Asia, go to Mexico. I mean, it's gone completely global, and it's the same small group of franchises, and it's just unbelievable. So technology and fans getting more connected just around the world is just unbelievable.
I would echo the fans getting more connected. I mean, it's interesting. I was just looking at some mobile stats this morning before I came up here, and I looked like 3 or 4 years ago, we had 1 or 2% of our business coming through mobile. Today, it's more than half of our revenue. Not traffic. Our revenue comes through mobile today, and that's because of the connectivity that you're talking about. I mean, you're a sports fan. You've got so much great content anywhere, anywhere you are, all the time. More devices, more connectivity, and I think that's a massive opportunity to just get engagement to even greater levels.
I mean, I'm learning that I should get an Apple Watch, and it's
There's a Butler jersey on your watch already, special for you.
Right.
So I'm gonna finish.
And we have a banner, but we're gonna take it away and just say, just kidding.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna ask my last question, then I'm gonna pull up and pull up all the questions coming in from the audience. But kind of my final question: what is the best advice that you've ever received, and what would you like to share back?
Best advice I've ever received, probably to be a sponge. I barely made it out of high school. I went to college for 6 weeks, and the way I learn has been from being around smart people that I can just absorb kind of what they have. And for me, I think I learned as a middle school student to be a sponge, and and when I'm a sponge, it's the quickest way to learn. And I'd say if you could be a sponge without much of an ego either. That's a really good combination, because there's lots of smart people around. You just got to figure out how to always take the good in them. I was just telling a story yesterday to somebody there's somebody who I work with who 70 or 80% of what they say, and this is somebody who I used to work with but I'm still involved with, 70 or 80% of what they say may be very not useful to me. But I always look for, I keep spending time to get that 20 or 30% of the nuggets out of it, because it's so helpful to me, and I keep learning from those conversations. So I learned to be a sponge early on, and I think it's a great trait.
And I've gotten advice years ago, I agree with that. I've gotten advice years ago, that a life without purpose is really not the life you want to live. And, my son Campbell was born 22 years ago, blind. It's the reason I live back in Boston, actually, so that he could go to Perkins School for the Blind, great place in Watertown. And, Campbell, my son, almost taught me the lesson, which is it is more important. There are things more important in the world than wins and losses or business success or anything else. And, having Campbell's journey towards a happy, productive adulthood is sort of what's defined my family's life since. And so I did get to raise that banner in 2008, very, very lucky and thrilled to do it. But I'm the chairman of Mass Eye. It's the world's largest blindness and deafness research organization. We're trying to cure blindness. We're trying to cure deafness. And if you tell me what's your next banner, it'd be great if it were a basketball banner. It would also be great if I could put one up that said, "We beat blindness." Awesome. And so, as a matter of fact, everybody in this room could raise a banner, right? If you felt like it, if you work hard enough and get lucky. But what's your banner going to say? So that's what I'll share with you, is the idea that take a minute now and design the banner that you want to hang up in the rafters. It could be I was an amazing dad or parent, or I was, the biggest supporter of Big Brothers that I possibly could be, or I gave so much to charity, or I won a sports championship. But all of those are important, and some are more important probably than others. So raise your banner, and I'll come to the ceremony.
It's great input. It's great. I'm going to follow that advice.
Thank you, yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, so the way that this works for you guys, I have a list of questions, and the people in the audience have been voting on the questions that they want me to ask you. So, right, so it's very easy for me.
Did you buy that suit at Fanatics?
Today's man.
Okay, so here we go.
We actually, by the way, licensed sports suits are a good opportunity. We joke now. We've actually looked at adding licensed sports suits, and
Why not?
They're coming.
All right, you mean on the inseam?
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely.
going to have the three
By the way,
stripes down the arm like the old.
We could sell 500 per team in each sport. We'd sell, we could be a $10 or $20 million business.
So I got a suit in the mail that a tailor had made with Celtics stuff, and then on the inside was all sorts of shamrocks and everything. It's like, so that was, I'm apparently supposed to wear that suit to the game. Maybe I'll wear it tonight.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think it's going to bring good luck.
Right,
I'm
right.
superstitious a little bit too, so I like it.
Okay, so
I might have sent it to you though. Could have had a little bit of
Right.
special luck for me. You never know who that really came from.
legalized sports betting nationwide is inevitable. How interested are you to investing in companies in this burgeoning market?
I think it's easy money.
So yes.
Definitely yes.
That's a yes.
That's
For Michael,
yeah.
that's a yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, sports gambling is definitely coming. Certainly, Adam Silver, helped with that a lot. In the last few months, I think there's going to be a lot of money made in legalized sports gambling. I think the companies that are granted the rights by the leagues are going to do very well, and I think the leagues, the teams, and the right operators can make a lot of money together. But I think there'll be tens of billions of dollars of value created pretty quickly in this business.
Does it take away in any way?
I think ultimately, it's going to make it a bigger business than it is. So if you look at what's done in illegal betting, I think it's going to grow the overall category. I think it's going to bring regulation that's needed to the overall category, and I think it will. Over time, yes, I believe if I don't know what the number is, but if a bookie has a 70 or 80% market share of total sports gambling in the U.S. today, they're certainly going to have less share. But I think it's going to be a very big, good business opportunity.
And I think the Premier League is a good example. They've got legalized betting, during the matches at the stadium seat, and and it's helped propel the growth of that league to incredible heights. It's well known that the NFL is has the most gambling on it. The NBA has a growing amount of gambling on it. Some of it legal and some of it probably not. But I'm going way out on a limb. But it's something it's going to be there. I think we can control it, and I think it actually helps fan engagement to have legalized gambling.
Great.
Which is another example of how sports keep growing. Because here you think about gambling as a big business opportunity, but also increasing fan engagement just makes the whole rest of the sports business that much bigger, which is why I'm so bullish on sports.
Yeah.
So this one has the most likes, and I didn't ask it first, but I will now. As an owner, is tanking good or bad for business? So good luck with that one.
Wick, they must
Michael?
Have, they must have meant the Celtics. They couldn't possibly have had any relation to the Sixers.
So I will start. If you don't mind, I was
I
pretty
won't read
much
from the script, the PR script that I've been given either.
I was pretty much a co-sponsor of the bill or whatever at the last NBA owners meeting. I mean, I was a strong advocate for flattening out the lottery. I think it's one guy can completely change a team if it's the right guy in the right year, and getting that first pick or knowing you're going to get one of the top 4 picks because of the way the system is, that if you have the worst record, you can not pick worse, I think that it is, than 4th, it's an incentive to really smart people to say, well, gee whiz, if we're not going to win this year anyway, it's a shame that we're going to be in the middle. And I don't like that incentive, and I think it's broken, and I fought hard to fix it, and Adam Silver and I were outvoted, and others were outvoted at the last owners meeting. So that's my opinion on it. I'm not thrilled. I'm fine with everybody playing in the rules as they exist, but I'm also think we should change the rules.
So, we kid around a lot. This is a subject I'll kid a little less around about. And certainly the best people to speak on behalf of the Sixers are Sam Hinkie, who is here, or Josh Harris or David Blitzer. But I'd say maybe I'll just take it up a level. You know, in business, we make a lot of decisions in the long term that are rough in the short term. And you're making them because you have a goal of raising another banner, as you said the first day that you bought the team. And you know, in Fanatics today, I'm doing a lot of things that people would say are crazy because I believe that long term they're going to have huge benefits for us. I think it's the same thing in the sports business. So to me, if you've got a long-term vision, you want to be a perennial long-term winner, and you've got to make investments to be a long-term winner. I think it's great. I think it shows. I think it shows discipline to not do what's easy in the near term. And I think the Sixers are a good example of a team that was in the middle for a long period of time and not having a great path to be great. And I know when Josh and David put the group together to buy the team, they had aspirations of also raising banners and being winners. And I think they're very committed to doing what's right for the team long term.
And it's clear that in the NBA, for sure, I'll just speak about our own sport, or my own sport here. If you're bringing in veterans to win a couple more games, that's fine, but you're not developing the kids. And so the way we luckily got to 08 was that starting in 04, we started playing Rondo and Perk, and then Tony Allen and Delonte West and Al Jefferson, and and how many of those guys were still there on the championship team? It was Rondo, Perk, and Tony Allen, but we traded 7 players for Kevin Garnett. Yep. And another 2, I think, 2 plus a draft pick to Seattle for Ray Allen. And so we basically built up and then said goodbye to 10 young players that we considered really assets, tradable assets. So if you're not building up the Joel Embiids and everybody else to then get to the point where you get the transformative superstar, he may or may not be one, or he becomes a piece in a puzzle. I shouldn't be talking about someone else's player, but I just mean general idea of if you are going to get to the transformative place where you have a roster that can go 66-16, which is what we were, and we still had a bunch of 7-game series and barely squeaked out our 39-point victory over the Lakers in the final game. If you see my pickup truck parked out front, it's the white Ford F-150. License plate is Celtics 39. It's my favorite number. Thanks, Kobe. But anyway, you need the transformative players, and so you got to play the kids. You got to give the kids playing time. Every player in the NBA is playing for his life every night. The next contract, you hire a coach like Brad Stevens, who would light himself on fire, to win 5 minutes worth of a game, much less the whole game. So you put a young roster out there. You hope they win. They fight like hell to win. They want to win more than breathing, and that's fair. That's fair competition.
Okay, we have some aspiring entrepreneurs in the audience. What's the smartest way to get started in investing on a small level in sports?
The best way to ask me that question one more time so I can
What's the smartest way to get started in investing on a small level in sports?
Buy season tickets.
To the Celtics.
And a bunch of gear.
Yeah, from Fanatics. Thank you. Right? That's a good deal. And we should get Revolution tickets in there as well. Support all constituencies up here. Look, I think the good news is I think in sports there's great ideas. We hear great ideas every week. I mean, there's not a week that goes by that someone doesn't get to us with actually a pretty good idea. And it's one of the best things about being an entrepreneur today, and it's different from, I think, when I started in business. It costs so much less to start a business today than it did 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, because technology's so much more advanced today. So, for me, I'd look for, big ideas, and I'd invest in myself in that. I'd find an idea that I was passionate about, that I like, I'd invest in myself, and I think it costs less to do it today than it ever has. I mean, what we started GSI with, the company I sold to eBay, we spent $100 or $200 million in 1998 or 1999. You could do it for such a fraction of that today, just because it costs less to do things and with great technology.
All right, there's a great answer, but there's another answer, which is you can go buy MSG stock and you own the Knicks and the Rangers. I'm serious. If you want to invest $1,000 in pro sports teams, you actually can do it with publicly traded stocks, and a bunch of the European teams are actually publicly traded as well. You can go buy a little piece of a team.
Yeah.
Just not the Celtics anymore. I took them private.
By the way, in the spirit of what you're saying, I think it's great for people who have an interest in sports, buy those stocks and study them and read their 10Ks and their public documents and read all the research about them and just get smarter because there's so much information to make you a smarter investor as well.
That's great. So traditionally, players are paid based on abilities. How do you see a player's brand affecting how much they can command?
Well, that's tough. You know, we just said goodbye to a great player, a former champion who has an incredible brand and just is an incredible guy. One of the most interesting people I've ever met, you know, and that was Rajon Rondo. I was going to say Jeff Green, but miss Jeff as well. But saying goodbye to KG, saying goodbye to Paul, hearing that Ray had left, and for half the money to our arch rival. You know, we love you, Ray. And saying goodbye to Rondo, it's really tough.
Yeah.
But it's my job to, with my partners and, you know, basketball people, to make the tough decisions to, even when the brand gets big, to try to have the launch. But the hardest part and the worst part of my job is approving trades.
Yeah.
For that reason, because I'm a fan. We're the fans that bought the team, and I'm a fan. And when KG and Paul came back and we played the videos, and the lights went down, and all of a sudden there were these arms around me, and it was KG. You know, thank God it was dark. You know, people would have seen me probably tearing up. You know, those bonds will last forever. And so saying goodbye to those guys is horrific, very heartbreaking.
I don't think I think
Oh,
you
sorry
said
about
it so,
that, Mike.
I think you said it
Took
so
all the air
perfect.
out of the room.
I think you said
know.
it so perfectly. I
All
can't
right,
add anything of value to that.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay, what opportunity is bigger? U.S. sports going abroad or foreign sports coming to the U.S., and why?
That's a really good question. I mean, you could debate either side of it because certainly, you know, what the NBA is doing internationally is awesome. And, you know, we have Alibaba is the largest
Who does
investor.
he play for?
Yeah, Alibaba, exactly.
Number 44.
Yeah, they're the largest investor in our third business, ShopRunner, and I was just having a conversation with Joe Tai, who's their executive chairman, about the NBA last weekend, and he basically said, you know, the way he looks at the NBA is no sport, EPL, no sport has any relative importance, you know, versus the basketball and NBA. So from one perspective, we could say, look what the NBA has already done internationally, look how much further opportunity for growth there is in the future. Look at what the NFL is starting to do in London. It's awesome, and I think we're just getting started. The flip side is soccer. You've heard for 20 years it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. There's huge growth coming this way. So I'd say they're both great trends that benefit us both. I mean, I think as a NBA co-owner, I should argue it's, you know, if I had to pick, it would be the globalization of U.S. sports. But I think there's, you know, the trends are great both ways.
Good answer.
Happens every once in a while.
Great answer.
So, let's see. Moving forward, what factors will contribute to higher values of sports teams? It's a big one.
Undisciplined rich people. I mean, if you look, you know, I root against every sports value because I'm a buyer, not a seller. So, you know, two of the worst days for me in the last year and a half was when the Clippers got bought and when the Bills got bought. I want to vomit during each taking in of the information. I think value. Look, sports values are going to.
I had a slight champagne headache the next day.
Yeah, right. Right. That's because you're like the billion I told that guy was actually like maybe a $500 million, $1 billion low. So we're on different sides of that one. But unfortunately, your side is the right side to be on right now because it's a great time to be a sports owner. You've got, you know, in sports overall, you've got, you know, a reasonable labor approach. You've got people paying appropriate fees for media, which is multiple times what it used to be. And you've got businesses that used to be, when you bought the Celtics, I'm guessing they didn't make any money. And I'm guessing it wasn't a great business. And today, I'm guessing it's a much better business. I don't know. But we're waiting for your answer.
Well, it was a public company when I bought it,
Yeah.
and they were reporting a profit.
Yeah. So today, if you look in basketball overall, you look in NFL overall, I mean, the profitability of sports teams today is dramatically more than it was 5 years ago. So these are much better businesses.
Let me break down the numbers.
Yeah.
And you're an owner as well, so you know. But just breaking down the numbers. So is it like there are 1,000 billionaires in the world? There are a number of billionaires. I'm not one of them. There are a bunch of...
Thousands.
You're one and I'm not. But there are thousands of billionaires out there. They have plenty of money. This is the time of their lives. It's the chance to be out there going after a trophy, going after a banner, doing things in the community. But, you know, it's an unbelievable... There are only so many of these jobs. And by the way, if you do the math on what my friend, Steve Ballmer, paid, you know, my understanding was and he hasn't told me this, but I've read in the press, you know, he's a T-bill investor. So he's getting 2-3% on his money. He's actually going to do better than that on the Clippers. Okay, so that's a net positive investment, and he's having you watch the YouTube clips, he's having the time of his life. And he gets to write off 60, or actually 100% of it over time because he's active. He gets to write it off against other income.
And take everything
So
you
I
said.
think he actually had breakfast with me at one point, and I'm not going to say who said, whether I said or he said, but somebody said at the table, I think he underpaid. Okay, so do the math from that standpoint. When I did the math on the Celtics piece, 360, they were making a number. I said I can borrow, and that number will enable me to pay off the debt, and I can raise money in the community from guys who just want to be part of a possible run for a championship, have the time of their lives, and they're not going to want anything back. And the numbers hold true. So if you were doing, hang on a second, if you were doing Goldman Sachs, multiply, you know, the cash flow and everything else, 360 is crazy. But if you're doing it from this other method, which is it's a decent use of capital, and we're going to have the time of our lives, and maybe we'll get lucky someday and we'll make a little bit, but that's not what it's about, you know, it's fine. And I think that's going to continue. The more billionaires there are in the world, the more sports teams will rise.
So we agree on, I think, 2 of the 3 parts there. We definitely agree that sports values are going to keep going up. I think there's only one person in the planet who thinks he underpaid, and that would be him. I don't think there's anybody else who thinks that $2 billion for the Clippers was underpaying. I remember somebody who would be most appropriate to have a perspective on the value 6 months earlier thought it was $600 million or $700 million. So. Look, here's the reality. If you have $25 billion, it doesn't really matter what you pay for a sports team, whether it's $1 billion, $2 billion, or $3 billion. If you want to buy the sports team, you buy the sports team. And the great thing about the NBA, there's only 30 of them. And if you want to buy one, you got to find one of the 30 to buy. And in the NFL, it's 32 teams, and that math benefits the values continuing to go up. I think the good thing about being a buyer in sports, and this is where I was going, is that these are becoming better businesses. And the underlying business today is a much better business than it was 5 years ago. And I think as you've got more good new owners, owners
and
like
players,
yourself,
and more great players.
Agree.
Worldwide, amazing people.
Absolutely. And what I was where I was trying to go is guys like you who bought the team in 2000, you know, when you guys bought in 2003, or 2002, and in general, I think smart owners and ownership groups that are coming in, I think they're taking a lot of bad businesses and making them better as well. Because you've got, you know, media that's escalating dramatically, which, by the way, is great for the players. And you know, there's a lot more money to be split between the players and the leagues and the owners. You've got labor, which is more rational. And then you've got, I think in a lot of cases, the teams that are trading, you've got better ownership groups buying those teams, which are helping to make better businesses. So the way I think about it is everything's pointing up in sports value. And what I'm begrudgingly willing to admit is I think ultimately Ballmer will have made a respectable investment, even though he's the only person who thinks that $2 billion was a bargain.
But there's 2 of us.
Yeah. Actually, there's probably 30. There's probably 31 of. Right. There's 31. It's just nobody who wants to buy into sports would have that perspective.
So, Michael, this question is to you. It's specifically for Fanatics. Wick, you can feel free to chime in. Do you view the possible NCAA player royalties regulations as a boost or a roadblock to growth? It's
definitely a boost. I mean, without question. If you think about today, our biggest business is jerseys across, you know, you look in the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, it's jerseys with player name and number. And in college, that's a far less important part of the business. And I think if they can get to a good system where it's, you know, it works for different constituencies, which by the way is very complicated, I think it would be a giant growth lever for us in our college business. And And we're very excited about the potential of that as future growth.
Awesome. All right, we are out of time. So let's give a big
Thanks, man.
round
That
of
was great.
applause.
That was fun. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys
That's
very
awesome.
much. Thank you. Thank you.
I only take hugs from you.